Illegal drugs, an issue that progressively steps into the spotlight, both globally and locally. But why? There are three contributing factors that make illegal drugs a highly debated issue, being crime rates, health concerns, and budget and economic impact. Legal drugs assist in raising crime rates by making substances illegal to grow, sell, buy, and consume. Decriminalizing drugs can overturn this process, or so says Harvard economist Jeffrey Miron.
Legalization would reduce crime, first because a lot of violence that is associated with drug markets arises because those markets are underground, because they're prohibited, so the participants can't use the standard legal system to resolve their disputes, and they resort to violence instead. There's also the possibility of some further reduction in other types of crime, such as income-generating crime, because with lower prices for legal drugs, people would have less incentive to steal or engage in prostitution or things like that in order to support their drug habits.
Illegal drugs can lead people to practice poor health habits, like using dirty needles. If drugs could be decriminalized, how could a needle exchange program help to improve healthier practices both globally and locally?
The reason that legalization would help reduce the spread of AIDS is that a lot of transmission currently occurs because people use dirty needles. They use needles for injecting drugs that others have already used before them who already had contracted HIV. In a legal market, drugs would be much cheaper, so people would have less incentive to inject. They could consume them in other mechanisms that are not as cost effective but still would give you a reasonable bang for the buck if drugs were inexpensive. And in a legal market, people would be able to buy syringes legally, so they'd be much less likely to want to share them in the first place. And manufacturers of drugs would try to market them in ways that were relatively healthy by having them in prepackaged syringes, disposable syringes, and things like that.
The illegal drug markets lead to governments spending billions to suppress supply and demand channels. Billions that could be spent on a struggling education system. But how could decriminalizing illicit drugs lead to a shrinking economic deficit? Miron continues.
It would shrink the deficit simply because we would stop spending all the money we're spending locking people up, prosecuting people for drug crimes, arresting people for drug crimes, and at the same time we would tax the income that's generated in the drug market. Even if we tax drugs at rates similar to all other goods, we would collect billions of dollars in tax revenue. And if we tax them at rates similar to those on, say, alcohol and tobacco, we would probably collect tens of billions of dollars in tax revenue every year. So the deficit would certainly go down because of lower expenditure and higher tax revenues. Shoot.